When we were in San Diego earlier this week, making headlines everywhere, and the next day we got the San Diego Nixon, their daily paper down there. The San Diego Reagan, that's Herbert Klein's newspaper. But it's all right, he's not a social democrat. Anyway, here is a report here, and it says, Coronado, that's the date line, where all the admirals are retired. A witness to the assassination of President Kennedy said here today she has no serious doubts that Lee Harvey Oswald fired the shots which killed the president. However, Mrs. Jean Richardson, who was on the 4th floor of the Texas School Book Depository when Kennedy was shot, said she is not satisfied with the Warren Commission report. Well, we asked her to come up, and this is Vicki Adams Richardson with us now, and she came up from San Diego to tell us a little bit about Dallas that day and subsequent questioning by Commission counsel. So we can jump in most anywhere in that story ever since.
Can we start with where Vicki was when the shots were fired?
Yeah, that'll be a good start.
All right, Miss Richardson, I show you here
Yeah.
a crop photograph, of course. This is the book depository building, as you know. It'll have better like that, but of course now you can't see it. Right?
That's good.
You can see it.
Fine.
Of course, this is the 6th floor window from which the commission said all the shots were fired. And where were you?
I was located in this window here on the 4th floor, 2 floors under Oswald.
And the one window over to the right as you face out.
Right, in the second set of windows.
Okay. And where did you think you were at the window?
Yes, sir.
Where did you think the shots came from? The sound came from?
Well, the sound came from approximately this area in through here. Now, as I explained in my testimony, that could have been report, but this is going along with the Warren Commission's
but you said, you testified, right, that it sounded as if it came from the right below rather than the left above.
Right.
That was your exact quote. Yeah. And you were questioned by...
David Bellin.
Yeah, but before you went before the commission, you were questioned by what? A lot of various...
A number of people. I was questioned by the Dallas police. I was questioned by the FBI. I was questioned by the Secret Service. I was also questioned by the Special Services of the Dallas Police Department.
And what happened after you heard the shots?
Immediately after I heard the shots, I ran out to the storeroom on the 1st floor. You have to understand somewhat a little about the Texas School Book Depository building. This is a converted warehouse, and the first four floors have been remodeled in order to accommodate offices for various publishers. Now, I worked for a particular publisher. I did not work for the Texas School Book Depository. After that, I ran out to the storeroom, as I said, that was on the 4th floor, and ran down the back steps and out into the street.
Right. Now, of course, the commission said that after Oswald fired from the front window of the 6th floor, he went to the back of the building, placed his rifle there, hid it or threw it around in some boxes and camouflaged it just a bit, and then went down the stairs. And he was next seen, according to Roy Truly, the supervisor of the building. He said when he spoke to CBS in a taped interview that he was standing outside of the book depository building. Within a matter of seconds, he said, I ran up with a police officer, and there on the 2nd floor we saw Oswald in the lunchroom. So you saw Oswald on the stairs, right?
No.
No.
No, I didn't see Oswald.
How did Oswald get from the 6th floor to the 2nd floor lunchroom without being seen by you?
Well, that's a very good point.
Is it possible, do you think?
Well, I suppose if he was running. Now, according to the Warren Commission report, Oswald was not running. I was running. I was one set of windows over. I had 2 floors on him. I did not have to put away a rifle and, walk down, because when Baker and Truly encountered Oswald on the 2nd floor...
Baker's the police officer who went up the stairs with Truly.
With Truly. They said that Mr. Oswald was not out of breath. Mm-hmm. Now, this would indicate that he had walked down.
That's what the commission said, yeah.
Right. But I did not encounter him. Now, in order for somebody to walk down those stairs, there are very heavy wooden doors that have to be opened. These, I explained to you, it's a remodeled warehouse, and these doors are approximately that thick, which gives you an idea of the type of door that you have to open, and it swings shut, which means that you can hear somebody. They're L-shaped stairs, and as you come down, obviously with creaky old stairs, I could hear somebody clomping down or even walking down from another floor.
What'd you hear?
Nothing.
Well, the commission timed Truly running up the stairs, and they timed Baker jumping off his motorcycle and running into the building, and they timed some FBI men, I think including, I think the Chief Justice himself went through the ritual of going from the window, going down to see how quickly he could make it. Did they ever time you?
No, sir, and this is, of course, a very strong point that I feel they should have, and I mentioned this to them, and they refused to.
You mentioned to the commission?
Yes, sir.
It doesn't appear in your testimony,
no,
in the
sir.
printed version.
Prior to testimony in Dallas, I discussed my participation in the case with Mr. David Bellin, an attorney for the Warren Commission, and I mentioned this to him, that I thought that I should be timed, and he just dismissed it as being not necessary. He said, we timed Baker, we timed Truly, we have the testimony from the 3 colored fellows who were on the 5th floor underneath Oswald. We see absolutely no necessity for timing you.
Well, you weren't alone, were you?
No, sir.
Who was at the window with you?
There were 3 other people at the window with me. I made the 4th person. But at the point at which I started running with a young lady named Miss Sandra Stiles at the time. And Miss Stiles also testified to the FBI and to the Secret Service.
You mean she was questioned by them?
Yes, she was. But she was never invited by the Warren Commission to testify. However, she ran out with me.
Did you tell that to the commission, that
Yes,
she
I did.
ran down the stairs with you?
Yes, I did, and this was in my FBI testimony, which they had in their possession.
And they never called her?
No, and I asked them why. And they told me that it was not really relevant, that I gave them the best testimony.
Which they then disregarded?
Obviously.
Yeah.
In fact, in their summary of the whole thing, that if such and such a thing happened, and if so-and-so ran up certain stairs, then obviously my testimony was inaccurate. You know, I'm just a
Because Oswald got down the stairs, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just want you to feel badly. Let me tell you what the commission did to almost everybody who disagreed with the commission's preconceived conclusion. I'm reading from this book, these are quotes now about how the commission handled the testimony. The commission, quote, could not accept important elements of Deputy Sheriff Craig's testimony, close quote. Mrs. Randall was, quote, mistaken, close quote. Governor Connolly, quote, probably was mistaken, close quote.
Shot, too, but mistaken.
He was probably shot also, yes. Frazier, quote, could easily have been mistaken, close quote. Daniel's testimony, quote, merits little credence. Rowland was, quote, prone to exaggerate, and there were, quote, serious doubts about his credibility. Whaley's memory was, quote, inaccurate, and he was, quote, somewhat imprecise, close quote, and, quote, was in error. Cantor, quote, was preoccupied, close quote, and, quote, probably did not see Ruby at the Parkland Hospital, close quote. Mrs. Tice was in error. Wade, that's the district attorney, quote, lacked a thorough grasp of the evidence and made a number of errors. Weitzman was, quote, incorrect. Mrs. Helmick's, quote, reliability was undermined. Ruby and Shanklin were misquoted. The doctors at Parkland Hospital were misquoted, and they were also in error. Mrs. Connolly's testimony, quote, did not preclude a possibility, close quote, that it actually did preclude. Mrs. Kennedy's testimony about the wounds in the president was deleted. Mrs. Rich was not even mentioned in the report, and Mrs. Clemens' existence was tacitly denied. Well, this is how the commission dealt with testimony which was inconvenient, and your testimony was very inconvenient, because if your estimate of what took place is accurate, then Oswald could not have gotten from the 6th floor to the 2nd floor, and he was found on the 2nd floor, and if he couldn't get there from the 6th floor, and there's only one set of stairs, right?
Right.
And the elevators were not working.
Right. Well,
were not
they were
working
not
at
operating.
that time, according to all the testimony, the officer and Truly. So if Oswald didn't get down those stairs when you were there, if your testimony is accurate about when you were there.
Yeah.
Of course, you must be wrong, because we know Oswald was a lone assassin.
For a minute, and then I want to talk about Jack Ruby. We can. What's the experience with the commissioner? What's his name? Bellin? David
Yes, sir.
Bellin?
Yes, sir.
And you went, after you talked to the cops and the FBI and this division of labor we have, when you finally got, what was that like? I mean, I want to make this clear to the audience. She didn't see the commission, saw the commission attorney, commission counsel.
Yes, right.
Yeah, what was that like?
Well, the commission said it took the testimony of 552 people.
Yeah.
That's to use the term very loosely. 94 people actually testified before one commission member or more, and not one ever testified before all 7. The whole 7 members never met to take testimony. They met at the beginning to have their picture taken, and at the end to give the book to President Johnson. He held the report in his hand, and he said, the whole world was looking at him. He said, "It's very heavy." President Johnson's analysis of the Warren report. But Vicki testified before one of the commission lawyers, which is called testimony before the commission, to use their term.
Oh, all right. What was that like with him?
Well, I received a letter dated March 30th from Washington advising me that I would be expected to talk with a couple of attorneys in Dallas. And later on I received a telephone call indicating to me that it would be at the Federal Building in Dallas, and that I was to appear there at 2 o'clock on a specific day in April, which I did. Well, I was rather surprised when I walked in for a number of reasons. First of all, there was no press there at all. And as a matter of fact, the press coverage on that day was in the Dallas Morning News the following morning, page 14, a small article saying who testified, and that was it.
Not what they said.
No, just who
Because
testified.
the press wasn't allowed in.
No, they weren't.
The commission says in its report that each of the witnesses had the right to testify either publicly or behind closed doors, and just one troublemaker insisted on testifying before the public. Yes, thank you. And he did it twice, as a matter of fact. But did you know that you had the right to ask for a public hearing?
No, sir. As a young person, for one thing, and not having very much experience with the law, fortunately, I didn't know many of my rights at all at that time and was not advised of the fact that I could have an open hearing, although I was advised of the fact in a letter that we could be represented by counsel, too. But we did not know that we could have an open hearing. I didn't even know what was going to go on at all to start with. I walked in that day, and Mr. Bellin was approximately 20 minutes late, which was all right, except that I was very nervous. And he came in, sat down, introduced himself, introduced me to the court stenographer, propped his feet up on the desk, and he said, "All right, let's talk." So we talked. And he asked me where I was, what I was doing, et cetera, and said to me during the course of my conversation, "Now, Miss Adams, don't you think that you could possibly be mistaken as to your time?" And I said, "Yes, sir. There is certainly a strong possibility that I could be mistaken. However, just to sort of find out how many minutes it took me, for example, or my position, I said, why don't we use a stopwatch? I said, you've clocked everybody else, why not clock me? And, of course, then, no, we can't clock you. Well, that went on. And I also mentioned Sandra Stiles, who had been with me. That was of no avail. I also mentioned a woman named Elsie Dorman, who was on the 4th floor, who saw these 3 colored fellows come down sometime after I did, which, again, was not mentioned in the Warren report, nor was Elsie Dorman called as a witness. And we discussed a few other miscellaneous points, and then the formal testimony began.
Well, during this whole time, no record was made, is that right?
That's right.
Because in your published transcript of your testimony, there's no indication that you asked to be timed by a clock.
That's right. This was not mentioned during the testimony.
Any oath administered or anything?
Yes, the oath was administered at the time of testimony, but not during the original discussion.
They used the Warren report instead of
In other words, they were trying to help me in my thinking say what they want me to say, quite obviously. They were trying to guide my thinking that, yes, sir, perhaps it did take me 5 minutes instead of between 30 seconds and 1 minute. But I wasn't about to do it. So I didn't mention the stopwatch again during I told them that time approximation would be difficult without a stopwatch when they asked me certain questions.
Mm-hmm.
but I did not mention the fact that I do think you should tie me again.
You told them something quite interesting, I think, in terms of a man that you saw standing outside of the book depository building.
Yes, sir.
Would you tell us that?
Well, could we have that chart again, and I can indicate to the audience more or less where I went. Yes, the picture.
Whoop. Do you want this pointer?
Yeah. When I left the building, now the stairs are way in the back here. You can't. There's no way that you can figure out where they are. But at any rate, I finally ended up approximately over here, which is where a loading dock is. I left the building from a dock here. Now, before I get into who I thought I saw, et cetera, I'll discuss what happened here. Now, there are two witnesses, according to the Warren report, who said that during the first 5 minutes of the assassination, they were watching the rear of the building and they saw no one enter or leave. These two witnesses I saw, who were standing here. They were talking together and were not even looking at the building. One was a Dallas policeman and the other one was a man in a suit. Now, who they were, I don't know. But at any rate, I proceeded back this way and around the building and approximately to this location here, where I was encountered by a policeman.
Why did you go this way?
Because that's where the majority of the people were.
In this direction?
They were running over that way. And I wanted to find out where the action was. So this policeman here told me to get back to the building, get back to the front of the building, which is what I did. So I continued running down this way and stopped approximately here, which is almost the front of the Texas School Book Depository building. While I was there, I encountered one of my fellow employees named Mrs. Avery Davis, who is no longer with the same company. And I just said, well, you know, what in the world's going on here? I was confused myself. I didn't know for sure if the president had been shot or what was going on. So I said, well, I'm going to listen to the radio on a police motorcycle, which was approximately in this position here, a three-wheeler. So I listened to that, and there were reports that said something about the president has been shot, Governor Connolly has been shot, Vice President Johnson has been shot, everybody in the world was shot on that corner. And I wanted to find out what was going on. And then they said that there were, the shots were either from the second or the fifth floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Well, that made me a little nervous because I had been on the fourth floor at an open window. So I was debating just at that point about whether or not to go back into the building. And right here on this corner, there was a man standing there who was dressed in a suit and at the time had on a hat. And I spoke with Mrs. Davis and I said, who is that man? Because he was asking questions as if he were a police officer. You know, he acted like he knew what was going on, and people then weren't acting like anybody knew what was going on. And so I said, I wonder what he's doing there. Maybe he's a reporter. I said, maybe he's with the Secret Service. I wonder what he's doing. But it was very relevant, and this is in my testimony, but it's never mentioned in the Warren report. Now the question is, who was that man? And later on, because he made such a strong impression on my mind, his face stuck with me in my memory. And then several days later, I saw on television a man that looked very similar to him. And
who was that man?
That man was Ruby.
Yeah, and you told that?
Yes, I told. This is in my testimony.
Yes, I know. And were you told by anyone that Ruby was or was not there?
Yes, sir. I was told by a police officer who had come over to question me that Ruby could not possibly have been in the vicinity at that time, that they had numerous witnesses attesting to the fact that he was in the Dallas Morning News building at that time, getting some advertisement for his clubs.
Well, aside from the fact that, of course, it's improper to tell a witness that what they saw they did not see because they couldn't have, there is not a single witness who ever said Ruby was at the Dallas Morning News at the time the shots were fired. There were those who placed him there 15 minutes before and 15 minutes afterwards. But you, of course, you know how close the Dallas Morning News is.
It's about 2 blocks away.
2 blocks away from the book depository building.
But there is a photo.
There is a photo.
Right?
My God.
Yeah. Of that corner.
At that corner, taken at about the same time you're talking about.
And there is a photo in the Warren.
This is the way it was taken. And
yeah.
Is that the man you think you saw?
Yes, sir. Now, you'll notice he's hatless there.
Yeah.
but he had a hat on. Now, it's possible that hats do come off, I suppose.
Well, they're removable, generally.
Yes.
Other things are removable, too.
This is the way the commission published it, though. The commission resolved the whole question, as you can see. No, you can't. Oh, yes, you can see now. They just sliced the man in half, and then they enlarged the picture so it would be the same size as the other pictures taken by a retired Air Force Major Phil Willis. So when they published all 12, you couldn't tell that this one had been cropped and enlarged. You see, compare the two.
May I bring out a point that I think is rather relevant, sir?
Sure, please.
At the APME in Coronado, I just happened to attend that also. And prior to that, my husband and I went in and were immediately caught by Larry Sisk, who was the convention manager and who had been so kind as to permit us to go there. Well, after Mr. Sisk saw us, he said, very nervously, of course he had a lot on his mind, he had a big convention on his mind, but he said, wait here. He patted me on the back and that kind of thing. Just wait here. And so I said, all right, I'll wait there. And he went into the restaurant, and pretty soon he came out with Mr. Joseph Ball, an attorney for the Warren Commission, and Mr. Liebler. And
Liebler,
of course,
yes.
Wesley Liebler.
You're very familiar with him, I believe.
I've heard that name. I can't place the face. But
Listen, can I interrupt you for a moment, Vicki? Before that, and we'll have that confrontation. We have to leave for 1 second. We'll be right back. Then we'll on. Now we're back in San Diego, right, with Wesley Liebler and Joseph Ball. And
Okay.
you were saying.
Yes, sir. Then Mr. Liebler was asked by me exactly where Ruby was at that time, because I still was confused and had never received any satisfaction on this man that I was wondering about. And I said, Mr. Liebler, is it definitely proven that Jack Ruby was in the Dallas Morning News at that time? And I said, because that's what an officer told me, and that's what it reads in the report and everything. And he said, well, now listen, let me show you something. And he reaches into his attaché case and he pulls out a series of slides. I can't remember if there were 7 on each side, but there were 2 rows. And he pointed to one slide and he said, I understand that you saw a man on the corner there. And I said, yes, I did. And he said, well, would this be the man? And he showed me approximately the same picture that is there. Again, a cropped picture, but not as cropped as the second picture that Mark showed us. It showed some of the face, and yet it was still cropped. And he tried to explain the cropping somehow. Now, I still can't understand completely what he said. He explained to me that the picture had to fit into the frame.
There you are. And I never knew why they did it.
If not Oswald.
It's like Mr. Nix, who took the motion picture films, and I went down to see him in his home in Dallas. And he took the film, a very important film of the president being assassinated, almost as important, maybe as important as the film taken by Zapruder and used by the commission. And he showed me the film, and I said, it seems to jump around, like there's some frames missing there, Mr. Nix. He said, oh, yeah. He said, a few frames got ruined. I'm sorry about that. I said, how'd that happen? He said, well, I gave it to the FBI, and when it came back, a number of frames were ruined. And he said, I guess it's the processing. So perhaps they had to fit it into the frame also. And
I don't know. I never figured that one out.
I'm not too good on that technical stuff about how they have to destroy the photographic evidence.
Liebler continued to say in San Diego over and over that he was on the commission itself. He was the devil's advocate.
But may I say that Liebler never visited the Texas School Book Depository building. He told me that.
Well, I mean, these were busy men, Vicki.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And they only had 10 months to get the report out.
And limited funds.
Limited funds, and...
Yeah. Well, I think that the Ruby now... Is that as much as we have to say about Ruby? In other words, that it was left there, right?
Well, I think it was very good that Mr. Liebler showed you at least the crop photograph. It would have been nice if the commission showed you the crop photograph, too, when you appeared before him, or maybe even the whole photograph.
Well, they did show me a lot of photographs, I have to admit that.
Not of the man on the corner, though.
No, they showed me photographs of chicken bones.
There you
and
are.
A jacket, and boxes.
Yeah.
And
what were the chicken bones about?
Well, it's definitely been established that a colored fellow had chicken bones.
Bonnie Ray Williams left some chicken bones on the 6th floor of the book depository building.
And this
now, what's
was-
that got to do with the assassination?
Well, it's very relevant.
Oh?
I mean, it may have been a chicken.
There's no evidence to indicate that there was, when the paraffin test was given to that chicken, that gunpowder in his claws.
Well, may I bring out the point that Avery Davis, with whom I was at the time and who also saw this gentleman, was
The man
never...
who looked like Ruby.
Right.
And when you testified before the commission, you told them that she was with you.
Yes, sir, that's in my testimony.
And did they call her as a witness?
No, sir.
No. You see, they were in a rush. They only had 10 months.
But you have to have faith in them. That's what Joseph Ball said. You've got to have faith
Look,
in
if
them.
you don't have
that's all.
faith in the commission... you know.
Strong act of faith. That's
I
all.
do have faith in them, sir.
You do?
Yes, sir. I believe in them religiously.
That's almost the only way to do it.
I'd like to make another, just possibly something that could be of interest. Now, supposedly, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Dallas Police Department were all cooperating in this venture of discovering who was the true assassin. A gentleman named Detective Lavelle, who was handcuffed to Oswald when he was being transferred. You might recall him. He was the tall man in the light suit,
hat, yeah.
and the light hat. He came over to my apartment in Dallas one day, and he showed me his credentials, and I looked at him and I said, "Weren't you the one that was handcuffed to Oswald?" And he said, "Yes, I was." And I said, "Oh." And I said, "Well, what do you want?" Because by that time I had been questioned about 40 times. And he said, I'd like to know exactly what happened that day. And I said, "Sir,"
It's a matter of inquiring mind.
I said, "I have testified to the Dallas police already. I have testified to your special services of the Dallas police already. I have testified to the FBI already. I have testified to the Secret Service already." "Well, you may have left out a detail or two." I said, "All right, I'm glad to testify again. It doesn't matter to me, whatever you want." And I said, "By the way, why? If you have already in your possession 2 or 3 copies of what I've said to you." And he said, "Well, all of the records were lost that we had in our possession." And I said, "You mean to tell me that everything that we told you has all been lost?" And he said, "Yep, that's right." And I said, "Oh, well, that's the Dallas police."
Well, after you testified, did you ever see the typed transcript of your testimony?
You mean testified to the Warren Commission?
For the commission, yeah.
Yes. I waived my signature at the time of the testimony, which means that I agreed not to sign it, that they could go ahead and put it into the records as it was. About a week later, it might have been 2 weeks, I can't recall the exact date, a gentleman from the Warren Commission came to me with my testimony and said, "Miss Adams, we'd like for you to sign this." And I said, "What for?" I said, "I waived my signature." And they said, "Well, we want you to sign it." So I was glad to see that they were on the ball and they wanted to get all the details taken care of. So they said, "Now, before you sign it, will you please read it?" I said, "I will be glad to read it," and because I wanted to see what I told them, just back check on myself. So I read it. Everything seemed to be in order, except for a few things. The first thing was what my position was at my company. And I was employed there more or less in customer service, but at the company they called it an office service representative, which makes sense. They had me down as an office survey representative, whatever that means. Secondly, I told them where I'd gone to college, and they had down there, the court stenographer put down St. Mary's, Ohio. It had been St. Martin, Ohio, which I changed also.
You changed it on the actual transcript?
Yes, I circled
and the first one
and
also.
Changed it, and I initialed each page.
And you changed office survey to office service.
Right. And then the last page was the most impressive one, though. I thought this one was beautiful. When I was talking about the gentleman that I saw on the corner, I said I saw an officious-looking man. Now, we all know what officious means. And they had put in there, I saw an efficacious-looking man.
Efficacious-looking man.
And what's an efficacious-looking man?
I don't wish to be disputatious, Chief Mark. But if you're going to use words.
So, may I...
You changed
carry
that
on,
too.
Vicki.
Yeah, so I changed that to officious, and, I changed a few typographical errors, wrong quotes, and that type of thing. And they said now that this would be changed in testimony and all that sort of thing. And I said, "By the way, do many people make changes?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, quite a few." And I said, "Well, what kind?" And I said, any substantial? And this gentleman, again, I can't recall a name here, said to me, well, a doctor changed about 50% of his testimony. I said, 50%? And I said, well, was it substantial or what? And he said, well, let's say he wanted to appear in a better light. So that was more or less dismissed like that. But I signed my testimony, and I was dismissed with that statement. And when it came out in the printed form, it came out as I originally said it and without the corrections.
Well,
take a break. We'll be right back. That's now about the detectives.
Yeah, where were you when Oswald was killed?
Well, I had just arisen about an hour before, and I switched on the television, and I was watching television at the time, and I saw Oswald be killed on television. And about that time, there was a knock at the door, and I went to the door, and there were two men there, and this was the start of all of the interviews. And these men identified themselves, showed their credentials, and I admitted them. And they started asking me what happened and where I was and all that kind of thing. They were very nice. I can honestly say that everybody's been very, very nice. And then they had been there, I think, about an hour. It may have been less than that. I can't recall accurately right now. My sister was watching television in the den during this time instead of listening to us. And she came in and said, Oswald just died. And these two Dallas policemen with the special service looked at each other and they said, well, that about wraps up this case, doesn't it? And I said, you don't want me to say anything else to you? And they said, no, that's it. And I said, all right, whatever you want.
The case is closed. That's what the Dallas district attorney was saying at about the same time. Case is closed. Oswald is dead. That was 3 years ago. It's not closed yet. It's not started yet.
Also, it's very interesting that this one of the gentlemen that was there too told me that Ruby was very well known to the Dallas police, that he'd give them the shirt off his back, and they'd do the same for him anytime. This gentleman also told me that he had received little gifts like razor blades and things like that, and that, many times Ruby had taken him out to breakfast after the club closed and that kind of thing. So, it makes you wonder about payoffs. It makes you wonder about frames. It makes you wonder about the fact that Ruby got into that little tiny basement in Dallas. I mean, this is a very small area.
Yes, you have that picture, Mark? I showed it after you left town the last time. Showing you in front of that entrance.
Someplace else, but we can get it by the next segment.
Was it 15 inches wide or something? It's really,
well, it's actually...
You were standing at parade rest there, and I know it's 12 inches. No, it's really,
It's 9 feet, but with two men standing there, Napoleon Daniels, the former police officer, was standing there with Vaughn, the officer on guard. For Ruby to get past those two men, he practically have to say, excuse me. You really can't get by without brushing against the person. They were standing in the middle, as they said. Ruby walked past unnoticed. Warren Commission report.
Yeah.
Unnoticed by the officer on guard. Although the former police officer said Vaughn, who was on guard, looked at Ruby, and that he, the former police officer, Daniel, saw that Ruby had his hand in his pocket with a big bulge in it, and it appeared to be a gun in his pocket, he said. But he looked at the officer on guard. He said that the officer had the responsibility of keeping everybody out, but he looked right at Ruby. He seemed to recognize and let him go in, so I thought he must know what he was doing.
And that's with all of the press of America looking on. They see fit to criticize.
Not only did they not punish anybody, but Vaughn complained that his efficiency rating had been reduced by the Dallas police force from 90 to 86 after the killing of Oswald. He said that's unfair because the commission never proved that I let Ruby in there, and so he conducted his own investigation, and he told the FBI, and when he talked to them, that he was satisfied later that he found out that his efficiency was not reduced for letting Ruby in. It was reduced for letting Tom Chabot in. I don't know. The answer to your next question.
I see.
But you'll be happy to know that although he lost 4 points, it had nothing to do with letting Ruby go down there and kill Oswald.
In other words, nobody paid for that.
No. Well, I mean, if you believe every officer in the Dallas Police Department, Ruby never got in there because they all said he didn't get past me, and Oswald's still alive.
Yeah.
Well, my important question on this is the question of timing. When did what happen? Where was Oswald for sure? Was Oswald really on the 6th floor shooting? If he was, when did he come down? How about the people that testified to the fact that Baker and Truly didn't enter the building until 3 to 4 minutes afterwards, which is not in the Warren report, but which is in their testimony?
Mm-hmm.
How about the people who saw the colored fellows when they came down? And how about the witnesses that didn't see anybody coming out of the building from the rear?
Who weren't looking.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And why wasn't everyone's movements timed?
Well, almost everybody's was except yours. And you were the only one who had any testimony to offer which would have upset that which the commission
The thesis,
said.
the official thesis.
The official
Well,
thesis.
obviously I was inaccurate because this is what is in the Warren report.
Yes. Well, look, if you're accurate, Oswald wasn't at the 6th floor firing the rifle, and we know he was there. We start with that, right?
Right.
And work backward.
All the evidence shows that, and the evidence that does it is not part of all of the evidence.
We'll be right back in a second. This photo is at what instant, Mark? We had this on before, but I want to establish when.
Well, there's the
What
president in the over here, and he's grasping his throat because the bullet was already struck in the throat. And here's Governor Connolly seated in front of the president. And there's a man who's circled there who's obviously a spectator to the assassination.
Yeah.
Looks a little bit like Oswald.
Yes, but and is dressed as Oswald is dressed with a T-shirt and a sports shirt here when he's apprehended, when he's with the police. But the commission claims that's Lovelady, right?
Yes, Billy Nolan Lovelady, who was wearing, he said, a red and white striped sports shirt buttoned near the neck.
It doesn't look like that.
No. But Vicki knows or has seen
What about
both
that?
Lovelady and Oswald, right? Is that
Can you
true?
tell anything from that?
Well, it's amazing that you can see some similarity here, similarity of the hairline and facial features. But Lovelady, in this picture, if this is Lovelady, he's done a beautiful job of hiding his weight because he's a much meatier man than that, actually. He's much more heavy than this picture indicates. This picture would indicate that he's rather on the slender side. Wouldn't you agree to that? I mean, if you can see it.
Oswald was slender, right?
Yeah. And Lovelady is much meatier, which brings up another point, Mark. Lovelady was asked at the time that he testified before the Warren Commission in Washington if he saw me on the 1st floor. He and Shelley, I did see them by the elevators.
Lovelady testified before a lawyer for the commission.
Oh, excuse
I
me.
mean, it's called the commission, but the point is that not a single member of the commission ever saw Billy Lovelady, although they said that's Lovelady in the picture. And of course, Lovelady was never put there so that a picture could be taken and compared. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. When he was testifying before the attorney.
When he was testifying before the attorney, he was asked whether or not he saw me, and he couldn't definitely say yes that he saw me, but he said yes, he may have seen me and that kind of thing. And then he said that immediately after this, he went over to find out what time it was and to find out whether or not they should begin work again. But this was never pursued, whether or not he found out what time it was. This question was never brought up again. Immediately, Mr. Bellin, I believe it was, who talked with him.
Yeah, well, what's the significance of it?
The significance is the time. In other words, he had just seen me on the 1st floor.
Oh, I see.
Before
So
I
what
left the
time he
building.
had actually seen you.
Right.
Yeah.
Which would have a significance as far as Oswald, too, is concerned. But the question of time, whether or not he found out the time, was never pursued again.